This is a 14-ounce Boss titanium hammer. The reason I love this hammer so much, and it is doing so well, is this is packed with features. Boss definitely pride themselves on getting every single thing you can get into a hammer and having this serve as multiple tools at once. Now the first thing we can notice is it has a hexed shape head. Now Boss have designed this so you have the flat top and you get your hammer in closer to the walls and roast on frames. Looking at the head, we can also see we have a easy nail starter at the top. Sit your nail on the top like that. We've got a magnet which will hold it in place. So I can actually hold this upside down and swing it into timber and start a nail upside down as well. Now on the website they say this can start any nail, and true, it can start any framing nail, but if any nail is smaller than that distance right there, which would only count as a clout or a soft sheet nail, it won't actually be able to start it. We have a dual nail extractors from the top here. On either side of the top there's this little V shape, and I'll show you how that works. We'll nail this nail in first. Now this is designed to easily slip under the head of the nail like that, and you have a lot more leverage to pull it out. And these also work really well for small nails such as clouts and soft sheet nails if you're ripping them off doing a renovation. It's super quick just to give them a quick flick with the side of the hammer and it pulls those nails out. So these are handy and I do use them, but I'm going to compare this right now to my stiletto hammer. As you can see, this also has that little side claw in there, but this side claw is hollow, which means that if I had a nail which was sticking out a little bit further, I can just drop that hollow section through the nail and that will lock it in place. Whereas this has that small V, so I've got to line it up pretty perfectly with the nail head before pulling it out. It's not the biggest deal, but I have noticed it and it has annoyed me changing over to this hammer. What I do like about this hammer though, is it is designed in a perfect T, and that's made so you can put this hammer up against a bit of timber, and that's a squared line right now. The handle of the hammer is straight, so you can use your pencil and you can mark that as a square line. And while we're talking about using this as a square, you can see we've got all our degrees printed on the side of the hammer here as well. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to get my speed square out and we're going to compare the speed square with the hammer handle and see how accurate this is. And while we're at it as well, there's a little notch on the handle of the hammer, and that's for an easy 45. I should be able to pull that up to my timber, get that right there and trace that for a 45. Before checking that, I actually can say I'm not a fan of that right now. Since you need to have that to hook on your hammer and the head of it sticks out more, this is actually kind of hard to get that perfect 45. I can get what I think is 45, but there's a bit of a rock, there's a bit of a play using that easy 45 mechanism. It comes up about 47 degrees with the speed square, which is close enough for a lot of applications, but if you're doing perfect work, it's not as good as a speed square. The reason for that is, I have to say, is you got the markings on the hammer and there's a bit of interpretation of trying to sight the line through of where your marks are. It's got a no slip grip, and if I throw the hammer down my hand like that, I'm actually a good fan of this grip right now. Referring back to my stiletto again, my grip fell apart on the stiletto, so one thing I look at in hammers is how good the grip is. This seems like a firm rubber. I don't see this grip fading away. The stiletto grip started to just fall apart until there was nothing left. I can't see that happening with this grip. And probably my favorite part of this entire tool is we've got a 1/2 inch socket at the bottom here. And if you don't know what that socket's perfect for, I'll show you right now. That's a 1/2 inch bit right there holding my saw blade in. And even though a lot of these saws should have tools built in them to change the saw blade, they go missing all the time. It happens all the time on my work site that we need to change blades. We're always running around looking for an Allen key. That bottom of the hammer fits on that perfectly. I'll lock my saw in place. It's admittedly a bit hard to start that first turn because you don't have a lot of leverage on it. It's more of a straight stick, but there you have it. That works perfectly for changing saw blades. I know that works for my Makita saw, and I've also used it for my DeWalt saw. Now this hammer I have, it has imperial measurements. We've got inches written down the handle of the hammer. They do now have it in metric and imperial. So if you are in Australia like me, you can actually get the metric system on the side too. We also have our common cuts on the side here as well for when we're doing rafters. Now one thing I've found out with this hammer, I've learned this the hard way, and I had a bit of a learning curve to get used to the hammer because of this. The face of the hammer seems to be slightly curved in. Now, as I said, I've switched over from my stiletto, and that has a flat face. And I swear, looking at them, I can't even tell it with my eye. But I've come to this realization, a few of my co-workers have used this hammer as well, and they've all said the same thing. But when you hit a nail in normally, that tends to happen. It tends to bend the nail over. And I think what that is, it's how I've been used to using my stiletto, my other hammers. I'm trying to change over to a different hammer, and it needs a slightly different hammering style. I normally kind of bend the hammer over a little bit to hit, and you just need to pull your arm back a little bit, slightly change the angle from when you hit the nail. And I mean, it's quite easy to get used to. That hammers in perfectly now. It just takes a little bit of time to readjust how you're used to using hammers. One thing I do want to actually point out is on the newer models of the Boss hammer, the one I don't have, they've just recently released a newer model, and they do have a third side claw, which kind of incorporates the function I was telling you about, where you have that hollow side to put a nail in there. Overall, it's a very well balanced, lightweight, good hammer to use.